Hello, everybody, and welcome to the greatest, the mightiest, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the sports podcast world, the show that I lovingly call The Woodruff Report. Speaking is your host, David Woodruff. We've got a lot to talk about today in another action-packed moment in the sports world. Baseball season is in full swing. The contenders are starting to pull away from the pretenders. We've also got playoff hockey. We've got playoff basketball. NFL draft came and went. Hopes are high for all those teams, so it's a wonderful time in the sports calendar. Our Eastern and Western Conference finals are set in the NBA landscape. On the East, we will have those familiar Cleveland Cavaliers facing off against a sort of weird, new-look Celtics team led by rookies and role players and a great coach in Brad Stevens. They have it all to do against all-time great LeBron James and company from that band of boys from Cleveland. On the Western side, we've got the two that we all wanted to see in the Western Conference Finals, those Rockets from Houston facing off against the mighty Golden State Warriors. Both teams are at full strength. That is a good thing. We want to see these two powerhouses go at it full strength, go punch for punch, see who can knock the other to the canvas first and win what may even be a better matchup than what a potential finals would look like. So that's happening. We've also got Champions League final in about a week. Real Madrid and Liverpool, a matchup of historic proportions. Two teams that were incredible in yesteryear and are matching up again. A matchup that we all wanted to see. Two incredible fan bases. Proud, loud fans who are going to flock to Kiev to watch this Champions League final in what looks to be a thriller. Both teams can score and can score often, and defending is not their strong suit. I would rather watch a high-scoring shootout than a low-scoring defensive affair. We've got that going on, and more, of course, on the Woodruff Report. Let's get right into it. We've got some NBA. We've got some soccer. I have some new ideas of ways to shake up the sports world. I'm actually going to go on a rant today. By the way, if you say you're going on a rant, does that sort of ruin it? Or can a rant be artificial? Because I know as soon as I get into my rant, I will feel all the emotions naturally, but I feel like I might ruin it by saying I'm going on a rant. Anyway, I'm getting off topic and we haven't even begun the show. That is a preview of things to come, probably. As always, feedback is accepted and appreciated. Let's get right into it. This is the Woodruff Report. The melodious voice that you hear is your host, David Woodruff. Let's begin. 3, 2, 1. There is only one place we can begin, and that is in the National Basketball Association. The last 4 teams are set, and it's teams that people really thought would be here when the beginning of the season and when the teams were starting to form in the offseason. But, of course, a bunch of the teams are incredibly new look. I mean, you would have expected the Cavs and Celtics to face off in the conference finals. Maybe the Raptors figured into it when this season started. You would not have expected the Celtics to look like this, having lost Gordon Hayward, having lost Kyrie Irving, and all the injuries that they've faced. But they've fought, and it's a good story. And we get to see the historic Boston Celtics, who, of course, in the beginnings of the NBA were always competing for championships, and a historic team with an incredible fan base back to where they belong, the conference finals, after a little bit of a hiatus, not a long one, but a little one nonetheless. And we get to see the greatness of LeBron James in a Cleveland uniform facing off for his hometown team, trying to get his Cavaliers to a 4th consecutive finals. So, how did they get here? The Celtics did it by beating a young 76ers team who many had paged to make it to these conference finals 4-1. This series was a masterclass in coaching by Brad Stevens. Ben Simmons, who had been averaging a triple-double in the playoffs and who had been a revelation all season, tabbed by many to be the undisputed Rookie of the Year, was shut down, demoralized mentally, demoralized physically, locked up. Any verb that conveys the message of Ben Simmons not being able to do what he normally does applies here. He was locked down by those leprechauns, and Joel Embiid was not able to carry his Sixers through. JJ Redick was good throughout this series, but it was all about the Celtics, who found a way to get things done with the young guys, with Jason Tatum, with Jaylen Brown, who got hurt. So now the Celtics are sort of limping into these conference finals without superstars Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, and now without Jaylen Brown. They are limping, but you still have to play the game. The Cavaliers still have to beat the Celtics, and many thought the 76ers would be able to, and the Celtics showed that they've got that fight, they've got that dog in them, and you're not just going to be able to say, well, our players are better than yours on paper, so give us the series. They're going to say, that's not how basketball works. You have to put the ball in the basket more than we do, and until you do that, we're going to fight, we're going to claw, we're going to scratch, we're going to try to beat you. And that's what the Celtics have been able to do. On the flip side, the Cavaliers just annihilated their familiar punching bag, the Toronto Raptors, sweeping them 4-0. LeBron James was at his superhuman best, hitting fadeaway jumpers, driving to the rack, unstoppable. He is what the Raptors see in their nightmares. He reminds a raptor of the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, because every time the Raptors think and get that little spark of hope, well, maybe this is our year, a Thanos comes in and just destroys their hopes and dreams in the form of a 6'9" man from Akron, Ohio, LeBron James. He got enough help. Kyle Korver has been playing well throughout the playoffs, knocking down threes, playing good defense. J.R. Smith contributed here and there, but make no mistake about it, this was all about LeBron James. He is the Cavaliers team. He plays almost every minute of every game. Rarely does he rest. Only in blowouts does he seem to sit out of the game. If he does, it's for like 30 seconds at the end of the quarter. He is directing traffic. He's making passes. He's getting points. He does it all. And without him, this Cavaliers team would almost surely not make the playoffs. Kevin Love has been good here and there. Not super consistent, but he was very good in the Raptors series. Everyone really played well in the Raptors series, of course, headlined by LeBron James. I think it's because they had that mental confidence. We've got these Raptors numbers. They can hardly ever seem to even take a game off us in these last 3 years. And the Raptors maybe had on the flip side of that these guys have our number. What are we supposed to do? They're just going to beat us every time. And especially when you go down 2-0, lose your 2 home games to a team, you're thinking, well, there's nothing we can do. They've got Thanos, and we're just measly Toronto Raptors. Again, the superstars, the so-called quote-unquote superstars for Toronto, did not get the job done when the lights were the brightest. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry simply were not good enough to counteract LeBron James in this series and were not able to beat a very beatable Cleveland team. This is not the Cleveland of years before. This is not a super team. They've got a high salary. They're paying a lot of guys a lot of money. They've got a lot of good players, but make no mistake, the chemistry leaves something to be desired, and it's sort of a mismatch of people running around, making good plays here and there. It's a lot of individuals glued together by LeBron James. So what are we going to expect to see in this Celtics-Cavaliers series? We expect to see tenacious defense from the Celtics. They are not going to be able to win a shootout with this Cleveland team just because the points have to come from somewhere, and the sources for the Celtics from which those points can come is starting to dwindle with so many guys going down. they don't have a lot of guys who can score 25 points in a game. So when they do get a scorer who puts up 25, 30, they've got to take advantage. Jason Tatum's going to need to come up big. He's played great all year, but he's also been surrounded by a lot of talent. He's a very good one-on-one player, knows how to get the ball in the basket, and that's what the Celtics are going to need. They're going to have to grind out these wins, make no mistake about it. If, as I stated previously, if Cleveland scoring 120, 115 points, the Celtics simply aren't going to win a game, and I don't even think it's going to be close, any game at which Cleveland scores 115, 120 points. If you tell me, okay, Cleveland's in that 105 to 100 range, okay, now the Celtics have something to work with. Maybe they can stay in it, steal one late, in something like that, or catch LeBron James on an off night. The Celtics also have the advantage of home court, having the better regular season record, and that's going to be very helpful because playing at the Garden has been a big advantage for these Celtics throughout the playoffs. They've played much better when they're at home. They've got that crowd that's almost 100% Celtics, Boston diehard fans, making that arena loud. The parquet floor, it's hot in there, it's steamy. Things always seem to go the Celtics' way, and it's easy to fall into the, well, we're in the Garden, everything seems to favor the Celtics, and that's what they're going to need. Everything's really going to need to go their way for them to win this series. If the Celtics win this series, it will almost undoubtedly go to 7 games. They're not going to win this series in 5 or 6 games. I do not see it happening. On the other hand, Cleveland could make short work of this series, maybe winning in 5 if they get the upper hand early, maybe win the first 2 games in Boston. I think that would demoralize this young Boston team, and it would, similarly to what we saw from the Raptors, it would get their heads down a little bit, and that's when LeBron James is just going to show no mercy, get to the rack, get some and ones, get those layups, hit those jumpers, and make you pay. Cleveland's been good at home. They've got that crowd behind them. It figures to be a good series, one to keep your eye on. It's by no means just a LeBron James cakewalk to the finals. He's had to work, but this Celtics team would be favored if they were at full strength, and they're certainly not favored after all the injuries that they're facing. So, Celtics, Cavaliers, series starts Sunday. It's exciting. Tune in. ABC, TNT, ESPN, the games sort of circulate those 3 channels. If you can, watch it. If not, keep updated on your mobile device. They're going to be good games. Let's travel now to the West, where the matchup that everyone wanted to see, the new-look Rockets with Chris Paul and James Harden facing off against the mighty, mighty Warriors, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, all the usual suspects off on the coast in Golden State. This, if maybe I have a little bit of West Coast bias, but I think this is the better series by far. I think if you ask any basketball fan, this is the better series. And these are going to be some high-scoring affairs because both teams play fast, they space the floor, and they shoot a lot of threes. I would expect single-game 3 totals in the playoff records to be broken in this series. The Rockets shoot an unbelievable amount of threes. I was reading an article in Sports Illustrated, and Coach D'Antoni, the head coach of the Rockets, basically says if we're not shooting a layup, we're shooting a 3. He does not want any mid-range jumpers at all. He wants that completely out of the offense. He wants the ball behind the arc or in the paint for a layup. Those are the 2 shots he wants. So 3s are going to be flying every which way. The Warriors, of course, to their credit, do shoot a few more mid-range jumpers because they have a guy by the name of Kevin Durant who lives and breathes in that mid-range. He says, I'm going to elevate. I don't care who's guarding me. I'm taller. I'm longer. I'm the Slim Reaper. I'm going to put the ball in the basket. They've also got a guy named Klay Thompson who says, oh wait, I have the best form in the history of NBA shooting-wise, and I can shoot mid-ranges too. Steph Curry, hey, I'm also a great shooter. I'll shoot mid-ranges. Anyway, I'm getting distracted by mid-ranges and missing the greater point, which is that this is going to be an incredible offensive series. But that leads us to our main point. What team is going to play better defense? The Rockets and Warriors both play their fair share of isolation ball. The Rockets play more. James Harden, Chris Paul love to run that high pick and roll and go at defenders. They love to play one-on-one basketball, and they're lethal at it, especially James Harden, who's probably the best one-on-one player in the NBA. But make no mistake, when he drives, he is also looking to kick it, get his teammates involved, and they are very capable. Eric Gordon, Anderson on the perimeter, Trevor Ariza can knock down threes here and there. Capella does his job on the inside, mostly catching lobs and fighting for offensive rebounds. They all do their job, and when Chris Paul, Clint Capella, and James Harden played during the regular season, when they all played, they only lost one game the entire season. And they have not lost a lot in these playoffs either, beating both the Timberwolves and the Jazz by 4-1 margins. Let's talk a little bit about that Houston series versus the Jazz, because this was not as easy as many people expected. Donovan Mitchell put on a show throughout the series, made his case for why he should be Rookie of the Year. Of course, Rookie of the Year voting does not factor in playoff performance. It's only regular season. But we saw that this guy was the real deal. Maybe you did not hear as much about Donovan Mitchell just because the Utah market is not a very celebrated market within the NBA landscape. I'm not tuning into SportsCenter and hearing about the latest news in Utah and what's going on in Salt Lake every night, as opposed to Ben Simmons, who comes from the great sports town of Philly, where we've got reporters stationed 24/7 talking about all the latest, etc., playing for a more storied franchise in this Philadelphia 76ers. I hope I didn't offend anyone, but I think we can agree that Philadelphia is at least more established, I don't want to say better, more established sports town than Salt Lake City. I'm being politically correct. I'm trying not to make a hot take. We'll save the hot takes for later. The oven's still heating up on those. We've got some. I don't want to reveal anything, so I'll just keep my trap shut, as I like to say. Let's talk about the Warriors, who disposed of the Pelicans, winning the series 4-1 after beating the Spurs 4-1 in the previous round. They did it through incredible play from Kevin Durant throughout the series. He was frequently seen shooting the ball over the best shot blocker in the NBA, and Anthony Davis, leaving Davis frustrated as Kevin Durant would just elevate and shoot jumpers with a hand in the face. He couldn't miss, especially in that closeout Game 5. He was magical. Steph Curry came back in Game 2 of the series. Of course, the first possession he comes in the game, he comes off a screen and hits a three. He's like, what, guys? I've just been out for 25 games. You're surprised that I come in and immediately hit a deep three? And we're like, yes, Steph, we are. And he's like, well, I'm Steph. And we're like, you know how this scene ends. I don't need to narrate the entire thing. Steph Curry comes back. He was magical throughout the series, still getting those shots. Those shot mechanics perfected, but he was hitting deep threes. He was shimmying. He was sticking out his tongue. He was getting the crowd into it. He was doing Steph-like activities. Klay Thompson had just a phenomenal series. Game 1, he could not miss. Game 5, he couldn't seem to miss. He was just annihilating the Pelicans throughout this series. They couldn't shut him down. They had a guy right next to him, and he'd still put the ball in the basket. Draymond Green was probably the MVP of the series, however, playing very good defense on Anthony Davis, who he got his. It's impossible to completely stop Anthony Davis, but Draymond Green did about as good a job as you can. Shout out to Kevon Looney. He also played terrific defense throughout on Anthony Davis, hustled, left it all out there on the court, and was able to frustrate Anthony Davis minorly and get some stops for the Warriors through his good defense. Draymond Green hit shots when he needed to, moved the ball, did it all, played great, got into altercations with Rajon Rondo, which was great. Rajon Rondo, Draymond Green altercations are some of the best. I'd rank it. It's, of course, the best altercation in the NBA is no doubt Boogie Cousins versus Draymond Green. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's just the two most temperamental, angry, probably best trash talkers in the NBA just going at it. And I'd always watch back when Boogie was still on the Kings, and the Kings would play the Warriors 4 times a year, and those two would always go at it. They would get double ejections all the time. It was hilarious. I mean, before a Warriors-Kings game, you were like, either Boogie or Draymond is going to get ejected from this game, no doubt, probably yelling at one another and picking up their second technical. Anyway, I digress. Warriors disposed of the Pelicans. Pelicans look good. Drew Holiday is the real deal. He doesn't complain to the refs. He goes out, does his, plays lockdown defense, gets his points here and there. Very complete player, and that's always the problem with the Pelicans. It's been their guard play. They've got a star in Jrue Holiday. When Boogie comes back, they will be a force to be reckoned with, and that's a team to keep your eye on because they are only getting better. Anthony Davis is still young. He's only 25 years old. He will continue to improve. He's still in his prime. He is going to be very good in New Orleans for years to come. So, a preview of this Rockets-Warriors series. Threes are going to be flying in from everywhere. The Warriors should be favored, although they will not have home court, which is big. The Rockets had the better regular season winning. They had the best record in the National Basketball Association. And at home, role players always seem to play better. So those Gerald Greens, those Eric Gordons, those Andersons will play better in Houston than they will in another hostile environment. So those home games will help. This series, I think, will go to 7 games. The Warriors do have more talent in Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. It's tough to elevate over that, but the Rockets do what they do, and they do what they do well. So these will be high-scoring games. Don't be surprised if both teams have a 40-point score in a game, and they're going to be exciting. And if a team gets cold in a game, they're most certainly going to lose because when one team starts making shots, what I really hope in this series is that there's a game where both teams just can't miss, and the final score is like 135 to 132 because every shot just goes in, and it's just pure chaos. The coaches are just like, well, what's even the point of defense? Let's just keep someone up the court, and so we can just fast break. That's what I want from this series, just one taste of that. And I think this series is really going to epitomize modern basketball, space and pace, fast, isolation with shooters all over to space the floor and create those driving lanes for stars like James Harden, Steph Curry. Warriors ball movement is better than Rockets ball movement, which is why, in my opinion, the Warriors are a little bit more fun to watch just because the ball zips around a little bit more. But people often overlook the fact that the Warriors play a lot of isolation basketball, especially with Kevin Durant. They put everyone on one side and let Durant post up and shoot over a smaller defender or drive past a bigger defender. So there will be your fair share of isolation basketball in this series. It's going to be exciting. There's no doubt about it. This is going to be an exciting series. Will go to 7 games, in my opinion. I think the Warriors are going to win just because the Rockets still unproven in the playoffs. They've played well all season, but James Harden has not been himself in the playoffs in yesteryears. Chris Paul, of course, is famous for not really getting it done in the playoffs. So until they prove that these labels aren't true, we're going to keep saying it. So, Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals are set. Tune in, watch them. Great basketball is going to be played all over from San Francisco and Oakland area all the way out to Boston. We've got good basketball. They've got you covered. Tune in. It's going to be exciting. Let's change gears now to the Champions League final. Don't really have much to say on it. Real Madrid and Liverpool will lock horns in Kiev. It looks to be an ultra exciting match. Probably is going to end like 7-6 or something because neither team really plays defense and everyone plays. There's just a ferocious offense from each end. You've got Salah, you've got Mane, you've got Firmino for Liverpool, you've got CR7, you've got Gareth Bale, you've got Marco Asensio, you've got Toni Kroos, you've got Luka Modric for Real Madrid. It's going to be an ultra exciting game. That is going to occur Saturday, not this coming one, but the next one in Kiev. It's going to be a very exciting game, another game which you must tune into, and if there's a basketball game occurring at the same time, this takes precedent. because this is the Champions Final. And there's no sporting event like it. It's the biggest club event in the world. It is the World Cup for club soccer. Let's make a prediction. Who is going to win this game? And I'm going to shock people, and I'm going to say Liverpool. Real Madrid are not the unstoppable beast that they have been, and it's hard to win multiple Champions Leagues in a row. And I think Jurgen Klopp just has this rare ability to motivate his team so they're just flying around the field for 90 minutes. And Real Madrid are going to have trouble if this Liverpool team are hitting on all cylinders, because these guys can score early and they can score often. And if they get an early goal, they can sort of sit back and then do what they do best, which is hit you on the counterattack with all that speed from the front three. And I think this game is going to end up 3-1, maybe 3-2 in favor of Liverpool. But I think that Liverpool will actually dominate the game somewhat. They may not have possession, but they'll have the greater amount of scoring opportunities. And I'm basing this prediction on my belief in Jurgen Klopp and what he's done at Merseyside. And I've always been a huge fan of Jurgen, going back to his Borussia Dortmund days when he transformed them and took them to a Champions League final, which they ultimately lost to Bayern Munich, a mighty Bayern Munich team, a very good team. But I think second chance, he's going to motivate his players. He'll get the job done. And Real Madrid, it's tough to do it so many times in a row. They've played a lot of games these few years. They'll be up for it, but I don't think their squad is as hungry as this Liverpool squad is going to be for this crown. Could be wrong. Sort of hope I'm wrong. I hope the game ends like 5-4 or something, but it's going to be a good game. Tune in. So before I leave you, I know, so sad, I do have to leave you, though. I do want to just talk about something that I don't always, or I don't think I've ever talked about on the show, which is Major League Soccer, MLS, the American Soccer League. And I've been thinking a lot about it just because there have been, the level of play has increased. It's very good. And of course, Zlatan coming in will get all the headlines. He has not made this. He has not made the league viable. Just him, but the level of play just in general has increased. Teams have started finding young, hungry players who are very technically good and have started developing players better. But what is going to take this league up to the next level is a relegation system. And I find it ridiculous that the MLS does not have a relegation system. If a relegation system is basically, it's the system where the Major League Soccer leagues function together, in that the bottom three teams of the English Premier League get relegated or moved down to the second division, and the teams from the three best teams from the second division get moved up into the Premier League. So your leagues are always changing members as teams have hard seasons, as second division teams do better. And the MLS doesn't have that right now. What they're doing is they're just introducing new teams. A Nashville team is going to come in shortly. They're joining the league. But there's no relegation system. And what this does is that there's not really any incentive not to lose. If you lose, there's no consequence. You just finish at the bottom of the league and you're back in it, ready to go next year. And I can understand why the MLS doesn't have a relegation system, because they need these big market teams. Like if the LA Galaxy got relegated or New York City Football Club got relegated, it would be a complete and utter disaster, because lots of people tune in to watch this LA team. They're a big market team. But as the level of play increases in MLS, this relegation will become more and more of a problem, because if there's no consequence for losing, why, if you have a bad start to the season, why not just tear it down, sell all your players, get way under the salary cap so you can spend big? There is a salary cap in MLS, which also contributes to why there's no relegation system. if there was no salary cap, teams like Los Angeles, teams like New York would always be finishing at the top, like we see in the Premier League, where teams like Chelsea, Arsenal, or not, no, Arsenal's a bad example, Manchester City, Manchester United are always finishing at the top because they have such a bigger budget. What the salary cap does is it influences parity. More teams are good, and a team from Columbus has just as much chance of winning as a team from New York City. Although they can't attract stars because stars are more likely to go to New York than they are to Columbus, they technically have an equal monetary shot instead of New York just being able to outspend a Columbus or a San Jose. But I do think that this no relegation system is going to become a problem, like I said before, because there's no consequence for losing. And I think something needs to be done. There are alternate soccer leagues. There's the NASL, teams like the New York Cosmos. The team around the Bay Area is the Sacramento Revolution team up in Sacramento. And I suppose that could function as the second division. Some kinks need to be worked out because, again, you don't want like a New York team being relegated and a team from like Jacksonville or a very small city getting put in place. And maybe a relegation system isn't the answer, but I do think that there needs to be some consequence for losing, because right now I'm watching my Earthquakes, who are in second to last in the Western Conference, and they're terrible record-wise, and I'm mad as a fan, but there's like nothing that they really need to do. They're still going to be in the league next year. They can just sort of go, oh, well, we'll compete. We'll try to compete next year. And now the fans are left like, we just sort of have to watch this mediocre display, this mediocre content on the field. And it's like, well, this isn't exactly entertaining. So my 2 cents on lack of relegation system in the MLS, I think it will come back to bite them shortly. Experts are starting to bring this up, so solutions may begin to be proposed, and hopefully an alternative will be set out. This has been the Woodruff Report. I am your host, David Woodruff. On this episode, we talked about the NBA, the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Exciting. Celtics, Cavaliers, Rockets, Warriors. For a birthplace in the finals, will it be the 4th consecutive installment of Cavs Warriors? Have to watch to find out. We also talked about the Champions League final. Liverpool squares off against Real Madrid, and we gave you the Woodruff Report prediction on what will happen. And finally, we talked about Major League Soccer and a glaring problem that I see. Thank you so much for joining us and supporting my podcast, The Woodruff Report. I appreciate you listening. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week on The Woodruff Report. Goodbye for now. I'm David Woodruff. This is The Woodruff Report. See you later.